Okay. All right, and then we got the main recording down, so I think we'll get started while you're working on Facebook.
Okay.
The first issue up on the agenda this evening is update on the skateboard park. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So update. Who wants to take the lead on this specific issue?
Council President, this is Frank. I will take the lead with the assistance of Stan Rugas, and Jamar Kelly will be assisting me on this presentation.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I do apologize. I don't have my video on. It's because I have a lot of noxema. Just got back from vacation, so I got a lot of noxema on from the sunburn. So, so I wasn't able to put the video on. So, with that being said, Jamar, will you be able to help me put up the PowerPoint for us? What we're providing this evening is, thank you very much, an 8-page PowerPoint that captures the progress that's been made. So the purpose of this brief presentation is to inform council on the progress of the Reading skate park, and also that the administration does have an ask from city council to, if they would consider allocating additional funds to this project. So when we go through this presentation, it will all explain itself on what we're asking and what's been going on. So we go to the overview here. As you know, the city of Reading has been partnering with the Reading Skateboard Association, the Reading Recreation Commission, and the Reading Redevelopment Authority to develop a skate park over at Canal Street. This original concept has been developed by the Reading Skate Park Association. They are the original designers of the concept. They've been the original advocates, so they've been a critical part of this. It's important to note that it's been their vision, their dedication, and really their tenacity that where we're going. And their project has been really community driven by different meetings. So as it says here in the PowerPoint, the organization was founded in 2016 by a small group of members of the community. And in 2020, the RSA, which is the Reading Skate Park Association, and the city fully partnered together to sponsor this project. So we entered in a full partnership in moving this project forward. So we'll go to the next slide. So obviously some of the benefits of this, this project really strengthens our community. And ways that it does that is really a regional draw for action sports, which is defined as skateboarding, inline skating, and micro mobility, which I believe I was told includes bikes and scooters. It's another term for that. And by strengthening our community for this completion of this project, we're promoting fitness from all age groups, but we're also motivating our youth to get in the outdoors and really take advantage of a skateboard park or an action park. And because it's down at Canal Street, we're increasing enjoyment of our riverfront. It's such a huge asset for our city. And by having this skateboard park there, we were really just really highlighting what the riverfront's all about. And I know this has been previous concerns and ongoing conversations that this skateboard park will really help deter nuisance activities and criminal activity. And what I mean by that is when you have structured or, some kind of activity going on, you have a lot less nuisance activities, because nuisance activities happen when they think people aren't watching or there's not other activities. So this will only enhance the riverfront and contribute to the riverfront area. So we'll go to the next screen. All right, now we're starting to get into the more we're not in the soft matters anymore. We're getting into the bulk of it. So it's a public-private partnership. So, and as I stated before, it's the Reading Skateboard Association. They're the lead organization. And when this park is completed, they'll be the co-manager of the park with cooperation of the Reading Recreation Commission. So both those entities will work together to be able to manage this park and have meaningful activity. The Reading Skateboard Park Association will continue to the best of their ability to continue to raise private funds after this project is completed, just based on additional needs and amenities that may be needed in the future. the role of the city of Reading. Well, we're about to be in construction of this skateboard park. So the city of Reading will be the project construction manager. We will take the lead on using the city's procurement policies and state guidelines to begin the construction of this project. And we'll talk about what that timeline looks like. The grant management, which is an important part of this. So these are technical aspects of the project. The city will manage the grant management. There's 2 grants from the state, from DCNR and DCED, and there's a lot of technical stuff that goes with that. So we will manage that grant. Currently, DCED grant is from the Skateboard Park Association, but we're going to transfer that grant over to the city so we can help manage it because we have the capacity and the technical ability to be able to manage it. So besides the technical stuff that the city will be taking on, the maintenance of the park and will become the custodian of the property, meaning the city will be responsible to keep the park maintained a certain way. And ultimately, by being the custodian of the property, we, insurance and things like that will be our responsibility. The capital funds dedicated, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, is $700,000 has been secured with an additional $241,000 needed. These are capital funds from the city, and we'll talk a little bit more about the finances of this project. There's a site plan. If you look at it closely, you'll see, and it's 2-dimensional. We don't have a 3-dimensional schematic, but thank you, Linda. Perfect. So you get a little bit of an idea. There's a lot of technical stuff here with numbers and stuff like that. But what you're seeing here is that you can see that this is a nice size skateboard park. This is going to be a very nice size park that includes different amenities and the potential for future growth. And that's what's nice about this particular site. There's always opportunity for growth, and we're not kind of landlocked. So we'll move on to the next. Okay, we get a little bit of breakdown to finances and what we're really talking about when it comes to how do you finance a project like this. So you look at the funding sources, and you look, as I mentioned before, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania awarded the city and the Reading Skate Park Association 2 grants. One was for $90,000. Another was for $200,000. So you see a commitment of state funds. You really have the Reading Skate Park raise money through 2 foundations for a total of $275,000. And we'll get more into the capital money that's been allocated for this project for the city's commitment. So what you can really see here is kind of a little bit unusual when it comes to a park and recreation project. And it's not a bad thing. Is you really see a real strong public-private partnership here where you have a mixture of different funds and different involvements. Traditionally, when you have a project like this, it's usually solely public money or through grants. We have a significant commitment from private money involved in this project and a strong private and nonprofit entities part of this. So you have one of the strongest public-private partnerships in regards to park and rec programming that we've seen in over a decade or more. So that's something just to duly note that this really is a special project in that sense. We'll go to the next slide. Now, phase 1 of the project, and I'll explain a little bit what phase 1 means. You see the anticipated cost. Now, keep in mind, this isn't the cost of the total project. This is a commitment of the city. We're looking at, we have construction, there's engineering design, there's fencing, there's lighting. We have to have this all fenced. There's a thing called the flow bowl. And if you can visualize, you might have seen it on TV where it's a bowl and that the skateboarders and the different other sports utilize. It's a feature that doesn't exist in other skateboard parks in Berks County. So I believe this will be the first place that I'm aware of. So as a caveat, that will have this type of bowl, because you do have a skateboard park 2 other places, I believe, and they're nice, but they're very limited in what they offer. So you have the flow bowl. So you have that. So basically, the anticipated cost of the city's commitment is $831,000. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, and this is keep this in mind. What you see, the breakdown of the different costs. Now it's interesting. You see demo costs. You talk about just a whole bunch of concrete, landscape restoration, and stuff like that. This is from 2018 numbers because pre-pandemic, but I don't know, Stan. I think Stan's available by phone. I think Stan's having trouble on the visual part, but Stan, do you hear me? Is this something you want to weigh in a little bit on? You want to provide some construction background here for the audience? If you can hear me? All right. I don't know, Linda, if he's having trouble. He texts me. I don't know if you can
Yeah.
speak.
He's on by phone. I gave him the ability to talk.
Okay. So I don't know, see Stan, let me see here.
Unless he,
What we can do is while he tries to get on there, Jamar, is there any, let me look at the other slides. I don't know if we have another financials. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to move to the next slide, but we wanted to point out that this cost plan was dated at the end of December of 2018. So in light of the pandemic, there could be potential fluctuation on some of the commodities, whether it's concrete, lumber, or the steel reinforcement, just so that we're not, 200% wedded to this one fixed number. We'd like to allow for some potential fluctuation in commodity pricing.
Excellent. No, that's very important to note. And before we get into construction timeline, before Stan weighs in, I did go over the finances pretty quickly, but I know that, I don't know if we need to go back to that page or we can talk just briefly about what this project and the finance structure. If you want to.
Oh, I think that was my cue.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. This is where I need your assistance. This is where
I like that, Frank. That was a good transition. So we have commitments from the state, which require a local share match. That's where the initial capital funding allocation of $300 is going to help close any potential gaps. We still, though, when we went through the review of the construction cost plan, need an infusion of an additional $241,000 to close the gap that we see on construction. And that would be in this current funding year to get the project off of the ground. That does not include what's been earmarked for 2022 yet, but we can't actually obviously use at all in the current fiscal year.
So Jamar, what we're asking council for the consideration on Monday, I don't know if it was Bill 47, it was something like that. We're asking council to allocate an additional $241,000 this year for the capital budget. Am I following that right? So that's what we're asking council for the consideration on Monday.
Yes.
To funding.
That is
Okay.
the motion on the table. Yes.
Right. Okay. To help fund the gap, because as we said, this explains here what the money's for. And as Jamar said, we're working off 2018 numbers. So that's just the caveat, but we're prepared to, just like all our other projects, that's existing everywhere, to adapt to any possible changes that may occur.
It's also worth noting financially that the initial fundraising done by the Skate Park Association is what has funded SSM's site engineering work, as well as ground lines. This document here, the architecture design work as well, was also funded by the initial donations from the Skate Park Association. So they are still fully financially invested into the project completion.
And thank you for noting that, because a lot of this project got started on those things you don't see physically, as you say in the studies, because it's in the floodplain, which will not affect the project. It's a technicality that there had to be some studies and technical studies and permission from the DEP to be able to make sure that the water runoff doesn't go into the river, and that we're taking care of the stormwater, and that things aren't being unnecessarily disrupted. So there was a lot of things that were very important that had to be done, that the Skate Park Association paid for through their private money, because those reports were critical to determine if we can construct at this site. Without those reports, we couldn't move forward with construction, and they've taken the lead on that with the private money. And Stan just texted me. He says he's on, so he's either on the phone or video. I can't tell. So Stan, Jamar, did you have anything else? I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I just zoomed. 1 second, Stan. I zoomed in members of council so that you could see how the architecture drawing does include all of the stormwater management issues that needed to be accounted for in the project. Sorry, Stan.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jamar. Jamar, thank you very much for that. And Frank, and I apologize to everybody. Let's just call it technical difficulties caused by a man, me. I apologize, everyone, but yes, but Jamar, that's a great point. What the pricing is, and I have to tell you, stormwater management with our MS4 and everything else, we need to understand how we do then channel the water, especially from outside of the bowl itself. We needed to have the water to go someplace, so and we needed to abide by our MS4 doctrine as well. So, but yes, thank you.
The where I'm hovering the hand at is where the bowl will be.
That is correct. What we are doing if we want to term it as phase one, this skate park will be ADA compliant. That was a key component of our grant with DCNR and the trails for the other 90,000. Number two is we are making sure that there is adequate parking. It will off street, and we're making sure that it is also fenced in. That was a specific requirement, not only by the Planning Commission, but by the Rec Board, because they do need to contain and who can come in and come out.
This rectangular area is where the parking would be.
That is correct. And under there also, we will have stormwater management.
Okay.
Correct.
Moving into the construction timeline. Stan, can you touch on the construction timeline?
Absolutely. Next slide, please.
Yep, it's up.
There we go. We will finalize with SSM. We have a very good engineer who's been working hand in hand with the architect. We suspect that we'll have bid documents to our to Tamian Purchasing by the middle of September. We will have everything out for construction by the end of by the end of September, and then bids back to us by the middle of November. This is a very aggressive, and we're going to do is move everything as fast as we can to abide by the timelines that are established through the two grants as well. Then it would be incumbent upon the council and the mayor and legal to ensure that the negotiations for the contracts are acceptable to all parties. We would like to break ground in the beginning of March, and with an aggressive timeline, as long as we're not affected too much by the weather. It would like to have a July 4th kickoff.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Excellent. And yeah, so it is aggressive timeline, but we feel that you know, there's been a lot of work leading up to this. Like I said, the Skateboard Park Association started back in 2016-17. They've been doing a lot of behind the scenes work. Just as we wrap this presentation up, just so we know that this project is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, is consistent with the City of Reading 10-year park and recreation open space plan, and the Berks County Greenway Park and Recreation Plan. So this project is consistent with all those plans, and these plans have been sent to the city planning and the county planning and reviews from DEP. So all this stuff's been approved by those regulatory agencies. So we come to the thank you part, and the thank you part is this: the thank you is making this project become a reality. Because in the beginning it seemed like, wow, this is a big project to take on, and we're getting very close to this reality of its completion. Thank you to Reading Skateboard Park Association, first and foremost, because the vision of this, the vision for our city, that this could become a regional attraction and for recreational opportunities, is very visionary, and their dedication and tenacity to really keep this moving through its ups and downs at the beginning of the project have been incredible. So they're the reason why we're having this discussion today. And there's also been other partners like the Reading Redevelopment Authority, who allows us usage of their property. They own this lot, no cost, a 25-year lease agreement. So there's no cost to any parties in here involved. So they're allowing us to use their land. I believe that there'll be I wouldn't call an MOU, but a lease agreement that will be coming to the council for consideration between the city and the Redevelopment Authority to memorialize that lease agreement. So we're hoping maybe next Monday, but I'll let legal, it'll come up soon. So that's part of the package. And the state and local officials, the grant application support, these are very competitive grants that we applied for. And so it required a lot of legislative support from our legislative delegation, our state senator, our state reps, the planning commission working with us to help us guide us through this. And the public funds have been secured so far from the city officials, from the mayor and city council, and their commitment that the public funds have already been allocated. In addition, what's being asked today, and most importantly, the greater Reading community of all their support from the community, of their awareness and financial support in the past and in the future for wherever may be needed. So that concludes the administration's presentation. Now, I didn't know if there's any. I'll turn over to the council president, but I didn't know about if there's questions.
Well,
I
before we get into some questions, Frank, can you talk us a little bit about the operations of the park once it's up and running?
Thank you. That's a very good question. So what's going to happen is the Reading Rec Commission, in conjunction with the Reading Skate Park Association, will manage this park. And we will have, before the park's completed, we like to memorialize things. So there's not going to be verbal agreements. It will be some kind of MOU, so it's understood. The Reading Rec Commission would take the lead for the most part of the money operations, but we would have the Skateboard Park Association to be part of that process also. So we will have an MOU that I imagine the city, I guess to be trilateral. So the city will be part of it. So we will iron out the technicalities, but both entities agreed and to help participate in this. So it'll be a joint effort.
All right, let's open it up. I have a question or two, but we'll open it up to council members first. Who has a question to start? I just can't see everyone on the screen, so if you can just speak up, that's fine. Marcia?
Okay, maybe I can just, first of all, I want to thank the team that worked on this project. And I've been aware of it from the multiple presentations for the Reading Recreation Commission over the years, and just the perseverance from the grassroots level to make this happen has been phenomenal. I think there are a lot of tricky parts to this. One of them, of course, being the contracting out of the services, considering the environment we're in. And I'm just wondering how that might affect the projected opening. And maybe we don't know that, but it just seems like certain supplies, construction materials are very dear at this point. How do you see that happening?
Marcia, you're absolutely correct. We are seeing issues with steel. I don't expect the rebar to be that complicated for the bowl itself. There will be a lot of wood that will be used to form. What all of a sudden I got across my desk today was sand, because a lot of that comes from China, at least the bulk stuff. But I suspect we don't have much. It's not going to be a complicated project. It's just going to be, it has to be done correctly logistically. We don't have alarm systems and the like. I just want to make sure that, yes, in my opinion, that the water flows correctly.
Okay, and then just my other comment, moving forward operationally, I think we need to look at how this fits in with our whole recreational system and at the involvement of the Reading Rec versus, another community entity operating it. So I think that's further discussion in the future.
Absolutely, Marcia.
Additional comments, anyone? Lucy?
Johanny has her hand up, Jeff.
Yeah, Johanny's had her hand up.
I'll go after. Sorry, I didn't see it.
No worries. Thank you. And yeah, congratulations to the State Park Association, because I remember these conversations many, many, many years ago. So congratulations to the group for definitely seeing this, carrying it out, and now it's gonna be happening. So I do have some questions. First, is the space 601 Canal Street, is that across from the Canal Street pub? Is it that space that's being allocated for the, okay. And then also, when are we expecting to get like a more accurate budget in terms of the need? Because I know that the spreadsheet presented was from 2018. So I'm wondering if the ask for city council is going to be a higher amount than 241,000, being that obviously the cost of goods and labor, et cetera, has increased.
If I may, Jahani, I don't expect it to be much higher than where we are now. I think this is a very good construction estimate. We did put a 15 to 20% contingency on some of the items. This should be pretty close. So the numbers that are shown today on the PowerPoint that Jamar and Frank compiled should be pretty accurate.
Okay. And then do we have an idea of long-term, right? Once we have our grand opening, what the cost is going to be, like the monthly cost to maintaining it? Like what, I'm just thinking like, as we're planning for future budgets, like how much should we be thinking of allocating for maintaining the park in the future?
I ran through some numbers for you. I ran through some numbers for you as you requested before, and I would like to treat this as a normal park operation where we do the grass cutting, and obviously the snow removal won't be affected. However, the bowl itself will take a little bit more TLC on our part. We do have vacs that we could probably use there as well, but it'd also be incumbent upon the skate park, and you're going to find users of the skate park that will also make sure especially the bowl is clean. So this should work somewhat seamlessly in Public Works.
Thank you. And if I may, for anyone that's watching on Facebook or listening, I would love to see more groups come up. So maybe we can get an ice skating rink, more pools, right? Like I'd like to see more recreational use of our spaces. That's all I'm putting in. So maybe we could make that happen in the future as well.
Wrestling. Sorry.
All right, thank you, Jahani. Lucy?
Yeah, this presentation by Frank and Stan and Jamar is just a testament to the amount of work and dedication that they have presented and matched by the Reading Skate Park Association, the other authorities that were mentioned. That everyone really has been working together in what I would call a true and successful public-private partnership. And it's not often that we see this. And I'm so happy that we are seeing and experiencing that here in our city with a project with what I think is probably a catalyst for the reuse and re-envisioning of our waterfront and our riverfront and an area of the city in which we know there have been some nuisance issues. And so, you know, there's ways to deal with those nuisance issues. And one of them is to take the vision that the community has brought forth and make it so. I couldn't be more pleased. I thank my fellow councilors for their support up until this moment in every aspect of this park. It's taken years. And, you know, the fact that the Reading Skate Park Association themselves have raised almost $500,000 to date and been investing in this by doing things like spaghetti dinners. They've been doing organized trash cleanups in the south side of the city. And using those funds and those benevolent efforts to engage and provide all of those resources to get us to that point. So one thing I've heard in conversation is how the Skate Park Association has pledged to continue those efforts of making sure, you know, there's litter abatement and making sure they're stewards of this park and making sure that they continue to have their fundraisers and also leverage their ability as an association to partner with entities like the city and continue to apply for funding on a state level, you know, and a federal level, but also really leverage our local businesses. And whether it's spaghetti dinners or generous corporate donations to be able to continue having those funds to make this sustainable, to take care of this park and to really see this as a dynamic aspect of something coming to our city that's going to be a draw. People, as far as I understand, will travel to skate our parks. And if you're familiar with this side of the city, this is very close to the Schuylkill River Trail and to trailheads and the ability, to have recreational use of something that we're talking about. It also helps that we've got a Reading native who's going to be participating in the Olympics shortly, and we should all be watching and cheering him on. So Mario McCoy, and just to show one of us, is a skateboarder, is making us proud. We support him, and projects like this make sense because they're visioned and driven by our community. We as the city have the opportunity to participate and help make that a reality. So this has really been exceptional to watch, but not interfere in the process because it really has been a tremendous amount of effort from everybody involved. And I can't thank you enough.
All right, additional comments, anyone? Marcia?
Yeah, and I want to add to Lucine's comments. First of all, we all have to watch the Olympics because our Reading native, Mario, is going to really rock there. And we're probably going to have, he's on the Olympic team now. We might have an Olympic medal winner coming back to Reading when it's time to inaugurate the park. But I wanted to make another comment about the riverfront. This is a very unique location. Besides where the skateboard is, it's going to bring attention to the Swinging Bridge Memorial that's down there. Interestingly enough, if you walk along the river trail at the right time of the evening, you may be able to see some American bald eagles flying down the river. They tend to fish in that area. So it's a really precious part of our city that sometimes goes overlooked. So I'm hoping with the energy of the skateboard park, we can start moving forward to some other uses of the riverfront. So we'll see where that goes. And hopefully it helps local businesses in that area. We already have a couple businesses, but it certainly can promote economic development. So it's a win-win all around. I just look forward to the future.
Okay, any other comments? All right, I just quick comment. I do think the cost will come in maybe a little higher than we suspected. See where commodity costs go by the time we let out this contract. But and my concern too is ongoing maintenance because of the use of this type of facility. I think we want to make sure we adequately budget every year enough money for the proper maintenance of this park. There's liability risks and et cetera, if it isn't properly maintained. So just, I think it's a good investment. I think every time you have kids skateboarding, we're keeping them out of trouble. So thank you for all the legwork and the presentation. If there are no other comments, we will move on to the next item on the agenda. All right, that item is all right, charter amendment requiring council to employ its own solicitor. And I realized yesterday I was supposed to send out a list of questions, and I didn't. But I know there's enough questions that we can put together for a solicitor to review this process with us. So I think where the body is they want to employ a solicitor and start maybe having a meeting with him about this specific topic. So I'm not against anybody moving forward a name or two. Linda, you had produced a list of names. Do you have those handy? And again, this is a solicitor just to help us through this specific issue. And I'm hoping before our first meeting with whoever we choose that we have some questions lined up ahead of time. I have 3 or 4 already on the tip of my tongue, but I want to make sure that we go into this with solid questions. And the biggest question, I think, is we discussed last week, does this solicitor serve as just a legal advisor, which I believe it does, or is there 2 primary city advisors, which others have interpreted this to be? So, Linda, if you don't have those names handy, we can get them out to everyone this week, and everyone should list out their top 2 requests or suggestions, and then we can tally it up from there. Comments, anyone?
Jeff, I have a question. It's Lucine. Yeah, I recall the names, and I know that we have used some of those individuals before. I know some of their reputations in terms of working with municipalities, but I wonder if, because of the specificity of what we are looking for, we could take, kind of some of our criteria, those questions you're talking about, and send them to this list of individuals to say, do you feel that you're adequately, referenced and prepared, to be considered? Because they may or may not. It's a very unique situation. That would be my recommendation.
I think the ones on the list would probably all respond yes, or they wouldn't have made the list. But
Okay.
I just think we pick a good one that we trust and we can get some general guidance for. I don't know that we need to make this any more complicated. And at the end of the day, I think we're gonna. Well, so anyone else have a comment? All right, so Linda, let's get the list out.
Oh, I have my hand up. I'm sorry. It's Johanny.
I can't see your hand. Okay, go ahead.
It's okay. Just for clarity, right, for everyone that's watching, we're looking to hire counsel to help us with the process of hiring a city solicitor for counsel.
Maybe not so much the process, but to gain an understanding and clarity on what the charter amendment actually stated, and what it actually means. From there, I think hiring our own solicitor and maybe using this solicitor to determine what flexibility we have. Can we hire someone part-time? Can we hire somebody on retainer? Can we hire a firm? Can we, yeah. So to your point, yes, some of the guidance around the hiring, but also to answer the general questions about the referendum question itself.
Got it. And then moving forward, depending, I guess, on the feedback and whatever guidance they're going to offer us, are we looking then to potentially hire for the new fiscal year? Because then I know we have,
yeah,
then we'll have to start identifying funds and where these funds are coming from.
Yeah, and we'll do that in the budget process. Yeah, our goal is to get, a position figured out by budget season in the next, 30, 60, 90 days, so that as we're going through the budget, Johanny, we can say, all right, we've got clarity. We need part-time, we need full-time, we need this, we need that. And then we can put it in the budget moving forward.
That's it. Thank you.
Yep. So I thought I was trying to be creative and get a semblance of questions, but let's just get the solicitor hired. I know everybody wants that, so let's just do that, and then I think we'll get through this pretty quickly. Linda, were you trying to say something?
It was,
Linda, you're on mute. You. Linda, we can't hear you.
Linda. Council President, I just had one thing to add. In terms of Act 47, there's no position issue if it's a consultant, but if it's an internal hire, then that would count as a management position against the cap.
Yeah, and that's a technicality we would work through with PFN. Yep. But we're not across that bridge yet. So, okay, Linda, were you saying something?
Yes, on Wednesday afternoon, Fred, Anna, and I had a conversation about this issue in part. And Fred and Anna discussed the potential conflict if we hired an assistant or someone to help us through the process. Fred, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's a potential conflict. I don't know that it would be. I think better stated, the question was, could the attorney selected to be the solicitor, to pick the solicitor, be the solicitor, or would they be ineligible? And I think there's a couple ways to go about it. I think one of the things that could be done and perhaps should be done is hiring an acting city council solicitor, so that not only would that person helping with the search, but will be doing the role in an acting position, because I know, we're having executive sessions and all that, and you guys really should have your own attorney. The city solicitor still represents you as a part of the city, but the idea is that you would have somebody that you could consult with confidentially, and that I could consult with from a lawyer to lawyer perspective. So
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of different ways. I don't think necessarily that it would eliminate the individual, but there's obviously going to be a bias. But I mean, we've appointed people to acting who become the permanent position frequently, so it wouldn't be unprecedented. And I think there wouldn't be an actual conflict, but there would certainly be a potential for a conflict. And we would just have to trust whoever is appointed that they would comport themselves ethically, and I think we're dealing with people. The people on those lists, I guarantee you, will do the right thing.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay selecting from the list and getting through the questions. And, if they're a candidate that applies, that's great. And maybe they win us over in the process, and that's fine too. I don't think I just think let's step through this thing so we can get it done. We'll be getting solicitors to tell us whether or not we can have a solicitor to get us to discuss having a solicitor. I mean, we'll go on and on. So I'm not trying, I understand the concern, but I don't want to, I just want us to get through this. So let's get the list out to everybody, Linda. We'll pick a name, we'll bring them in, we'll raise the questions, and we'll go from there. All right, everybody okay with that? That's our next step. We're going to continue, and hopefully everyone's got a week to pick a name or two. Let's publicize them so we all know who everybody picked at the end, and then we'll tally up who won, and then we'll bring them in. Okay? Linda, will you send that out tomorrow? Because in, in 2 weeks, we should be meeting with this person at the very latest. All right, thank you, everyone. Let's move on now to, number 3, finance. Define policy on use and approval of American Rescue Plan funding. And then also talk about the eligibility of the city for county and state funding that's out there. But first, and Jamar, Linda, maybe, and Fred, you can help us with this. Once this money is all going to be in one account, Jamar, the movement of any money in that account will require city council approval. Is that correct?
It's still fully subject to the city's purchasing policies.
So it is still subject to the $30,000 minimum. So there's concerns, before anyone goes, there's concerns on the body because of this, and to protect everybody, the administration, city council, that we somehow build some policy around this funding that, it all requires approval from a check and balance standpoint, because this is federal, let's just call it special money, it's going to have a certain scrutiny to it. Not like other federal money doesn't, but for some reason, there's going to be miscues across the country. I hate to say it, but we all know it. Somebody somewhere is going to have their hand in a cookie jar, and it's going to come out, and it's going to be shame on them. And I think what we want to do is protect the administration and protect city council, and most of all, protect the city by putting just kind of a sound policy around this money is what I'm hearing from people. Not that we don't trust the administration, and this money could transcend several administrations as well. I know the planning has to be done the next 3 years. So thoughts on that? I'll open up to other council members and then come back to the administration and get their feedback on it as well. I know the mayor's not on at the moment, is he? I haven't had a chance to talk. I haven't had a chance to talk to Abe. He was very understanding, and I'm sure the mayor would be as well. But I'll open up. Donna, you were first, and then I believe Marcia.
Yes, it's been, so looking at everything you've just said and conversations I've had with one or two fellow counselors, I understand what our city purchasing policy is, but I think because this money is so unique and is so so important that this is done properly, not piecemeal here and there, which to me, $33,000 isn't a lot of money, but piecemeal, it can quickly go. I believe that we should, through ordinance, ordain a policy that requires councilmanic approval of every penny that is spent. Because I think it's important for ourselves as the financial stewards of the city, working in tandem with the administration. Now we organize and prioritize lasting commitments to this money and projects that will have some degree of staying power. It is incredible legacy money being given to the city as it is to everywhere else. And I believe by ordaining a policy like this, it is a method of protecting some folks who might be approached. Well, let's just say it this way: protecting the mayor who might be approached to be helpful to people and doing all the things in the right way. But this protects him and or her, depending what happens in 2023, from being sort of maybe pressured, being cajoled, being approached in ways that may have some concerning factors there. So I will, and I don't want to speak ahead, but I think our next person who will be talking will be partnering with me. I will be presenting legislation, hopefully to be introduced on Monday night, that will be an ordinance ordaining this very policy that will require councilmanic approval for any monies expended for the American Rescue Plan. I strongly believe in this, and I will be moving forward.
Yeah, and again, and I think tonight's discussion, we also want to get the feedback and the input from the administration before we move forward with any legislation. Make sure we're all, there may be a quick.
Jeff, with all due respect, this was on the agenda. And if the administration cannot be here to
Donna, they are here. Donna, they are here.
Well, I'm saying if you're concerned regarding the managing director and the mayor.
No, I'm talking about the people attending the meeting.
Okay, because this is
we
clearly
don't
on
have
the
to,
agenda.
I don't think we're at the point yet where we have to craft legislation. I want to hear from Jamal.
I believe we're at the point we have to do that.
Well, let's hear from the administration and then we'll discuss what would be the best, if any, legislation to move forward with. There could be an enterprise fund concept. There could be a number of things that we could do, but let's let them think it through with us, and let's come out with the best solution. Marcia, were you next?
Yes, first of all, I want, if Jamar, I think he referenced our purchasing policies. I want to hear what he's saying specifically, but just my framework for looking at this is that similar to the CDBG money, which is federal dollars, where there's specific guidelines that need to be followed, all which include councilmanic approval. I think we need to follow the highest standard of practice in the allocation of this money. There's no question, and it's a matter of us showing due diligence. We're responsible as the fiscal agents of the city. If we don't do that, it puts everyone in a real quandary, and people are going to be asking for money. And there's no question, that's just the nature of the nonprofit world. That's the nature of people who, when they see this money out there, granted, there's probably things going on around the country. We can only control what's going on within the city of Reading. So I wanted to follow up after Jamar makes his statement about what we are looking at as purchasing policy, that then I can suggest where I feel we need to go for an ordinance.
Thank you, Councilor.
Before Jamar goes, I just want to tell you, I was on a conversation, actually Linda and I were on a conversation with Abe, and we discussed this. He fully supported the concept as well. So just to make sure we're all kind of on the same page here. Go ahead, Jamar.
Yes, so I would say that the city's purchasing policy covers all expenses regardless of where the revenue comes from. We cannot transfer any dollar amount above $10,000 without council approval. We cannot spend in excess of $34,999 without council approval. We have to bid any project that comes in or around that dollar amount as well, which also requires council approval. So I don't foresee any scenario where anything more than $9,000 gets spent or transferred without council approval. I would also submit that this is a one-time tranche of funding coming in 2 equal doses. CDBG, which comes in annually, we go through stringent requirements, and if we misspend a dime of that and do not report it, HUD would yank our entire CDBG entitlement. So we will just as rigorously report American Rescue Plan expenses, just like we do CDBG, home, and ESG, because we would never jeopardize our status with the federal government.
Tamar raises an interesting question around the details on the controls of those dollars. I don't know how much definition we have around them, but similar to CDBG, the reporting out of the use of these dollars is going to be very similar. Do you know?
There's going to be quarterly reporting on the dollars. The first report is due in August, end of July.
Okay, typically we do approve all CDBG dollars, or is there the purchasing policy also apply to those or no?
Council approves a CDBG action plan for the fiscal year,
Yep.
as well as home and ESG. And if there are any revisions or reallocations, that has to go back before council to be approved before
Right,
any
so-
changes to those programs.
So it's not like there's unencumbered CDBG funds that could be used to the tune of either $10,000 or $34,999 without council approval?
Even when they are, we have to come to council for approval.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from the body and from here from Jamar is, we want these federal funds to follow those same guidelines. At any amount, they're getting approved by council, is what I'm hearing, right?
Exactly. And what I also said on our last call was that we would budget to spend these rescue plan dollars in tandem with the 2020 general fund and other funds budget, so that that plan is in place on January 1 to start spending those funds and not a moment before.
So what do we need to do to state that if we need to do it at all, that we want the exact same provisions of CDBG procedures to apply to these dollars? Or is that inherent, Jamar, as part of the guidelines of the ARP?
It's inherent as part of the guidelines, as I see it as finance director.
Okay.
We're not doing anything different. We're spending the funds in any sort of different way.
Okay.
Council President,
Yes,
this is Frank. Yes, the one thing the administration is considering, and we haven't finalized it to bring it to the body, is possibly looking at a third-party administrator to help us administer these funds, because we're looking, and that's a common factor that most cities are utilizing. And when I say a third-party administrator, I'm referring to a consulting group who will help us create a formal application process to help finalize criteria that's needed for project consideration and really help develop the action plan. This is something that you would commonly see many times in community development. As there's new programs, when they become available, a lot of times we use a third party or consultant to help us with it. Many of the things you're just talking about are similar guidelines, but the Treasury Department did issue a large series of guidelines. And Jamar, his team, and Abe have been updated through a lot of different conversations, webinars on them. But this is a large amount of funds to allocate. So we are considering utilizing that. But if the administration would move forward, obviously needs council approval, there'll be more of a formal presentation, but there's preliminary talk about that. So
what would the cost be on that, Frank? And would that come out of the American Rescue Plan funds?
Yes.
Or would that come out of city funds?
It would come out, a very good question, in our most latest Treasury guideline conversation we had with the state. Yes, it's an eligible item that you could deduct.
So it would
from
come
your-
out of the 61 million.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
How much would that generally cost?
Because we don't. That's if council gives the administration approval if we would present something formally, we would have to go through the bid process to see what that would look like, right? I would say that the reason that provision was put in by the Treasury guidelines is it's been told to us the capacity to spend this money can be challenging at times, and that's why that provision is put in there to help assist mid-sized cities like us to utilize it if that's what we want to do. And and I know there has to be more discussion about that. So I'm not suggesting it's finalized.
So I'm going to ask that we do this because Linda, I forget the name of the CDBG reporting system, or Jamar. I mean, there were years that we weren't properly updating it. We actually had consultants help us, and we had years of unclosed files and unreported stuff, and we actually had money sitting out there we didn't. So I don't know what the reporting requirements are going to be for the ARP. I'm going to ask that we do this maybe before our next meeting. Does somebody have the capacity to extract from the 154-page report, if it's in there, you know, what the reporting and control requirements are going to be for these funds? That may answer a lot of our questions. I agree with Jamar. If it's got similar to CDBG controls, you know, we pretty much touch every one of those dollars through a vote one way or the other, either through the original action plan or through amendments, you know, given at any time. Is that something, Jamar, you could help us with, those controls, if they're already in there or not? I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. Also, please keep in mind, we're working under an interim final rule. The final rule from Treasury is coming in August.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hey, Jeff, Johanny has her hand up.
How comes I can't see Johanny's hand up?
Oh, it is.
Maybe because it's an animated hand. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so where am I
Great push,
supposed to
Johanny.
see the animated hand? Let's fix this right now. Put your hand up again, Johanny. Can I look?
It's on. I usually bring it down after I speak, but it's up there. I don't know why you can't see it.
Oh man, I got it. I don't have the real Zoom then. Okay.
Okay, no worries. So I remember from our last conversation, the administration said that they would present to us a plan sometime in September as to how the money will be allocated or spent, right? And then we have 4 years to follow this plan. So I'm going to assume that we will have a presentation with a budget attached to it, somehow similar to like a business plan, if you will. Am I correct in stating that?
There will be a budget attached to the action plan, yes.
Yeah,
I would not call it a business plan, but I would call it a budget for spending the rescue plan funds. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm gonna, Johnny, I want to just make sure everyone's aware. It's going to be a proposed plan because there's going to be some give and take here with members of city council. You know, what they come out with, we may fully agree with, and that's great. But I'm a sense there's going to be some adjustments. So, but they're leading the way and starting the process, which to me is the right way to do it.
And also, are you anticipating, like, I don't know, a working group session? Because obviously there's 5 categories. And I know like the everything has to be COVID relief, but there are 5 categories listed in that American Rescue Plan. So I know that there's been conversations taking place with different entities throughout the community to perhaps identify some of the needs. But I'm just curious to know if there will be some type of working sessions with this body as well, or should we just wait for what you present and then begin working sessions thereafter?
No, Johanny, it's my intent to have this on the agenda at least twice a month to allow the administration not only to give us updates, but also to gather any input as well. They may want to do some early surveying as they start formulating where they think these dollars should be spent. Getting our input and thoughts on that, because this is why we've kept this on the agenda. We don't want this to get down the road and people say, oh, you know, we didn't know where we were. So, you know, we'll keep kicking the tires. It's a lot. And I encourage the administration, Jamar and Frank, to, you know, keep us apprised on this is what we're thinking, this is what we're thinking, this is what we're thinking. So you guys don't get to the end of the process and we say, well, wait a minute. You know, and I think you know that. So we're going to keep this on the table for discussion so that we're all on the same page by the time we get to that kind of preliminary plan. Lucina,
and then one last, I'm so sorry, one last thing, if I may. So should we just be emailing you our ideas, suggestions, input? How do you want that process to take place?
Well, let me ask you something before you go, Jamar. I would suggest you email everybody on this call from the administration and council, but then also we have an opportunity to discuss it in the subsequent meeting. So you don't just email it and it goes away. So I think what we're going to do is we update this agenda moving forward. Linda, we're going to give it a finite topic of ideas and suggestions as well. So we have a chance to bring some forward to the administration. Go ahead, Jamar. I'm sorry.
Yes, all funding requests and or ideas should be sent to managing.director@readingpa.gov. Managing.director@readingpa.gov. And Abe's office is coordinating all of those asks and commingling them into an action plan for when we get to that September meeting. Absolutely. They should go to the managing director's office.
Go ahead, Lucy.
So a couple thoughts on this. You know, what as the administration and the managing director, as he's leading this, it is starting to put this together. It's not just a list of who and how much, but it's also why. So that strategy behind it is critical. It should be aligning with our comprehensive plan. It should be aligning with building critical mass and use of these funds, as opposed to scattered projects throughout in which will dissipate. And I would like to make that recommendation and appreciate very much the guidance and direction publicly for entities who might be interested, and us as counselors to submit through managing.director@readingpa.gov. That's excellent, because all of us are receiving questions and inquiries. But what I'd also like to see and make the recommendation of is, as the managing director is starting to formulate this action plan, breaking it down by district and making some time individually with each of us council representatives of those districts and just reviewing it. Say, hey, you know what? Here's my A to Z list from District 1. This is who's approached me. This is what it is. This is why they're asking for it. And then overall, this is kind of how it fits into the larger strategy and financial plan, in which, so that when it comes back to us as a whole body and when it's in front of us to approve and then to monitor through this process that we're talking about, a lot of this has been vetted along the way. I've heard that theme come up over and over again in many different aspects of our conversations as a body. So I'd like to make that recommendation.
Okay, additional comments.
Jeff, it's Marcia.
Marcia and then Maria.
Okay, I'm going to be very clear and direct. I find it very unsettling that we're even considering people's possible proposals for the use of the money at this time. We don't have a plan set up, so that when you follow a normal government process, and we all are familiar with this, and I know have a lot of strength on this team, it isn't a matter of people coming to you and asking for money. That would never happen at the state level. They would direct you to the appropriate department to apply for a request for a proposal that was based on a plan, a strategic plan. And that's what the city needs to do first. So I really wish we could come as a city to the public and say to them, we aren't at the point yet of making decisions, so that people aren't thinking, well, if I keep approaching this council person, or if I keep approaching this person in administration, that will increase my chances of getting the money. That's walking around money. That's not what this is. And I feel really compelled at this point that we need to put in writing through an ordinance what our policies and procedures are going to be, because if it's not in that way, we're going to not have any backing of anything legal behind us. It's going to be words. And even though I want to trust everyone at this table, people can change at any one point in time. This is a long-term investment, so that by the time decisions are made, other people might come to the table, and then we don't have anything in place that provides strong structure and guidance. And I'm just trying to look at protecting the public dollar the best way that we can. Okay, and that's what is probably flawed about this federal legislation, is it opened up billions of dollars without having as much structure in place as we might have had with other federal dollars. So I think, again, we need to have the highest standard possible. And I will have difficulty voting on anything that doesn't come through this process, no matter whether it's a project that's so dear to my heart that I feel is the most important thing for the city of Reading. If the product doesn't follow a good process, it shouldn't be supported.
Okay, so we're going to look at these guidelines as we know them to be, but no dollar is being spent until we have a clear understanding of the federal government's ARP guidelines, and that they're probably going to be very, very similar to CDBG, maybe even stricter, and they require the governing body's approval. So at this point, we'll wait to get more
Jeff,
definition.
don't forget
around
Maria.
that. Hold on a second. And then the other thing is, I don't suspect there's going to be a lot of outside entities that are going to qualify for these dollars. To me, in my mind, there may be 1, 2, 3 at the most. So the city of Reading is not opening the door up for requests for this funding. A lot of it's probably going to be infrastructure and other key elements that will have a legacy effect on the city. There are a certain few key entities, within the city boundaries that, probably qualify for some assistance, and we're going to have to look at those closely under the guidelines of the federal government as it relates to this money. I'm going to go to Maria, and then Nate, and then Jamar.
Thank
ahead,
you,
Maria.
Jeff. I just want to make a comment that we have to realize that this is restricted money, and any money that comes from the state or federal money, the city will be audited by them. So we have to have a plan how the money going to be spent, and we had to keep track of every single dollar that gets spent out of this money, because when the federal state come to the city or the state to order the city, we had to make sure we provide them all the information that is requested for them in order for them to complete the order. So this is restricted money, and we had to be very, very careful how the money we had to follow the guidelines, how the money going to be spent.
All right, thank you, Maria. Nate?
Hey, good evening to all. This is Nate Rivera. I'm one of the special assistants to the mayor. I rarely talk when I'm in meetings, but I want to make something clear. I understand everyone's concerns in regards to spending, and I understand it, but at the same time, I think we're jumping ahead of the gun, because the mayor's welcoming to the conversations. There's conversations happening. He has an open door policy that people come and they bring their concerns or their wants. There hasn't been no commitment. And please rest assured that we're going to be very responsible, and we have the right people, competent people that are going to make sure that the money's spent the right way, always knowing that council has the last word how the money's going to be spent. Please understand that the process will continue, that it needs council approval. So everybody's going to be part of it. I think the mayor has proven that he works in unity with city council, and moving forward, it will continue like that. It's not a free-for-all when it comes to spending. Thank you.
All right, Nate, thank you. Now, Jamar?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay, Donna?
Yes, and I appreciate what everyone's saying. I agree with Marcia. I feel much better if it is absolutely ordained through legislation, that there's, even if the legislation mirrors what is said in the rescue plan information, that it's still ordained on a city level. A couple of other things. I respect what Nate said about the open door policy, just so people understand that they're making suggestions, that there's no commitments, that there's no guarantees here or there. Also, when we talk about all this money, there is money that is also being granted to the county. And my concern is that the city will be discounted from that money because of other municipalities needing it. But I would remind everyone that we are a part of the city. So, we are a part of this county. So those monies should not be exclusive out of the city. The city should be considered for that. And saying all this, as we're looking at projects, as we're looking at legacy, to me, it's incumbent upon all of us to speak not only amongst each other for what we see as the major projects, and that includes councilmanic interaction with the administration, but also with our state legislators and also with the county. Because again, I don't believe the city should be excluded from the county funds. We are the biggest part of this county, and I believe everyone should have a chance, but there are some projects that supersede municipal boundaries, and just really we all need as elected officials to make sure that all these, that there are priorities set, that this is we understand this is legacy money, and like Lucine said, critical mass is respected in terms of how these monies are expended. So I'm looking forward to working with Marcia on developing some legislation here. And I do believe we need to the ordinance. I'm sorry, Jeff, that's how I feel.
Well, but we don't need to create legislation that federal guidelines will cover for us. So let's make sure we understand the federal guidelines before we create something that could get us in trouble more than it helps us, quite honestly. So, I mean, if every dollar of this requires city council's approval by the federal government, we're covered. Just like the CDBG funding as we're being explained tonight. So I would encourage, and I don't want to deter anyone from building legislation, but no need to replicate if those guidelines cover us. I'm not trying to dismay you. The other thing is next on the agenda is to talk about the county and state funding that's being granted by the ARP, because there is some confusion as to what those dollars are for and who they're not for. So before we get to that next subject, does anybody else have any comments on these federal guidelines relevant to the ARP dollars? Lucy, go ahead.
Johanna has her hand up. Let her go first.
I just want to, I agree with the body. I thank Lucine for her recommendation because we have a unique opportunity. And so we want it to be very well organized, very strategic. I don't know when was the last time we conducted a needs assessment, needs analysis of our city and our community, right? Because we're in no rush to be giving money out or spending money. We have to do things we have to do them right from beginning to end. So I just wanted to emphasize that. I know that at some point prior to the pandemic, we had a priority list of some of our city needs, community needs, and then the pandemic obviously hurt and devastated many, members of our community. So I just want us to be mindful of how do we utilize this funding to meet the needs of our entire city, entire community, if that makes sense, and doing it in a way that's, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. County offer, there's application process. People would have to apply for grants or funds, etc. But I just want to make sure that we do it the right way.
Yeah, and again, we're really, really early on in this, and we're going to have, we're not going to use 3 years, but we'll use a year probably and really plan this out well. I think everyone's concerns, I think giving the administration the starting point to come back to us and get our input along the way on a preliminary plan will allow us to tweak and adjust it as we need to go. I just want to make sure everyone understands what the ARP funding is, what the timeline looks like, and what the controls look like. Because that's right now, before we even get into even spending a dime or thinking about where we should spend it, we make sure we're happy with the controls and we understand what kind of money we're getting and we understand the timelines. So I think these are good discussions to be held because it's important. And the nice thing about this money is they did give us a sufficient amount of time, to think it through. And normally we don't get 3 years if in this case, not that we need 3 years, but they've given us time to haggle through our concerns and do, some planning with it. The next question around this funding is, and I don't
Jeff?
know. Yeah.
So my last point here is I think as Donna and Marcia consider drafting, some legislation, I'd like guidance from the solicitor to really tell us, how do the federal guidelines fit in with legislation that we might be proposing for our uniqueness as a city and how, we move forward. So it doesn't have to be right now, Fred, but that's something I'd really like a little bit more of an advice on as we move forward.
Yeah, and again, we don't have those federal guidelines in front of us. So once we get those, I think we'll either have a very good comfort level with those guidelines or we won't. So let's get those first and move forward.
Jeff,
Yes, Strat.
I was sitting back here thinking I was out of communications with you, had a problem, but we should be considering anything that's forwarded to us to consider. We should really be considering. A lot of people right now think there's all kinds of money out there. I'm not even going to go back to work because they're going to give it to me. We need to tell these people what these funds are going to be for so they don't think they're just going to be handing money. Thank you.
Okay, so, and I don't know, thank you, Strat. On the next question, if anybody has any clarity on this or not, I think the county funding is a little confusing. I don't know if that was earmarked for specific townships and municipalities or boroughs. And then the state funding, I don't know if anyone knows the funding use guidelines around those dollars as well. Maybe that's something somebody could gather for us before our next committee of the whole meeting. Does anybody have a comment on that at this time? If not, I'm going to ask Linda to pursue those answers as best she can.
Jeff,
Thank
I have
you.
one question.
Thank you, Linda. And then let me finish this, and then we'll use that by next week to do a deeper dive, because it is important to understand again what those dollars mean and what are we or are we not entitled to. That would also come into our planning process as well. So
We're not entitled to it, but we would be eligible to receive money from the county if they were to disperse money.
Well, that, but we want to understand what directives they were given. So you're saying, Jamal, we're not entitled to it, but we're eligible for it, is what you're saying. So
yeah, there's only a one pager for the county allocations.
yeah, but was there specifications to them when they receive this money, what they're supposed to use it for?
No.
Okay, none, no guidelines. They just got $94 million and said use it throughout the county.
It says, according to the act, for any county that is not a unit of general local government, funds shall be paid to the state in which such county is located and distributed to each unit of general local government within such county based on the population. So it's to be apportioned out based on population. We are a direct entitlement, so we wouldn't fit under that provision.
Gotcha. So we need to understand those guidelines better. Let me go back to Lucine and then we'll come back to that. Go ahead, Lucine.
Well, I think in addition to Linda, and Jamar, going back and doing, some homework here, I really think that the commissioners, should be invited and have the opportunity to present to us, or at least open up dialogue together, to have a mutual conversation kind of on their strategy. As I understand, their commissioning task forces together to review and come up with a plan. That's just my quick understanding. So I would like to make that recommendation. In addition, I'm unclear as to whether, even just from what Jamar said, it's not just even about entitlement, have other municipalities within Berks County received the substantial funding like we have, or are we separate? And then the county as a whole with all the municipalities under their umbrella have received a lump sum. So again, I think some of these questions really should be between the leadership ourselves. And I welcome that and I encourage that.
Well, the question first is whether or not we're excluded. So I want to make sure we're not. If we're not, I agree. I mean, I would expect the county to reach out to all of us, but we can certainly reach out to them and ask them to sit down. I just don't want to ask people if it's clearly defined that we're excluded, that we even bother. At this point, I'm not hearing that we are. And I also, most importantly, I want to understand the state funding formula, the eligibility there, what their described or prescribed uses were, that what was their mandate, their federal allocation, because that's an even bigger piece of pie. If we find out, I'm just going to ask Linda to reaffirm what Jamar said. If we find out by next Monday that that's true, that we're still eligible for these funds, we'll make the ask to one of our next meetings, probably 2 weeks out, Lucy. We'll ask the county commissioners to come in. But the bigger question too is the state funding. And I don't know if we're ready, if we have enough information on that, but same with our state legislators and even the governor. We've got to be prepared to make the big asks, but we've got to be prepared from a planning standpoint.
Yeah, and for me, really goes back to philosophy here. So, whether or not we're entitled or will be included or who's asking whom for whatever, I want to know what everybody's doing, right? Because ultimately we are all together. So
that's one thing. But if we're not excluded, it's different. Then we want to stake a case for you know, A, B, and C. If there's a mandate that they've been given this money and it says, by the way, they don't get any because they got A, B, and C, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking to them. I'd like to know what they're going to do with it, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time because we're trying to plan the 62 million we're getting. And then if there's access to another 10 here and 30 over there, we've got a bigger plan to devise. And we have to, so I'm just trying to figure out what we're eligible for. So Marcia and then Donna, and then we've got to move on, guys.
Yeah, and I think the ideal process would be that we plan together with the county, just as we do with CDBG, okay, that there is a sense that people will come through and they might go to both the county government and they might go to the city. So we need to coordinate with them as best as possible and see if there's any joint projects that we can really work on together, that's synergy for the whole county that involves the city. So I think this takes some thoughtfulness, but we definitely need to open up the dialogue. And I just wanted to know, like, the status if the administration has done that yet, because a lot of times that's what a role the mayor can assume. If not, we just, I think, need to be able to look at the what the dialogue is going to look like and hear from them how they're spending, so we can have some real synergy.
Yeah, and I want to remind everyone, in the last few weeks, we've learned about our money, the amounts, the timelines, the planning timelines. And tonight we're just opening the discussion about the county level and then the state funding, all aimed at getting down that road of integrating this. But I mean, we got to understand these funds before we knock on doors. And I think they're still understanding it. We're still understanding
Right.
it. Good discussion, but we are going in the right direction here. There's just a lot to take on. Donna?
Yeah, and just dovetailing on that, I would certainly request that this planning team or working team, you know, be in touch, and perhaps they already are, with the county, with our state legislators. But I would also respectfully request that on that team, and I don't know who's on it, but on that team, our auditor and a council liaison on that team. Respectfully requested. I would ask that because occasionally the communication doesn't come through as it should. Nobody's fault, everybody's busy, but if there is a liaison, and I certainly think our city auditor deserves to be on that team as well. So that would be my request. Thank you.
The auditor has been in the work group and included on all the meetings.
How about a
I will
council
talk to even the
liaison?
mayor about a council liaison. But again, I don't think things have evolved quite that far yet. I think we're still.
But it's better to be from the start, Jeff. It's better.
I
if it's
mean, from
the
a
start.
discovery standpoint, I don't think everyone's got all these answers yet, but I'll ask the mayor and Abe if we can appoint a liaison on that group with the auditor, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Anything else on this specific issue? A lot of moving parts on this one, right? And they're all good points and good concerns. I'm not trying to undermine, but whew, the controls have got to be on this money. I'm not laughing about it, but I mean, the controls got to be good with all public money. But this is going to have its extra scrutiny because, like I said earlier, somebody somewhere is really going to trip up over this stuff. And people are going to go, you see what we did? We gave everybody a bunch of money and look what they did.
We don't want it to be Reading.
We don't want that to be Reading. That's right. All right. We have next under the first quarter financials review. Who's going to cover that for us?
That's me, Council President.
And Jamar, if you just want to give us kind of the executive summary walkthrough of these, you know, your observations of the numbers, that would be very helpful.
Certainly. Thank you for your time. Just top line numbers on revenue. Our biggest revenue drivers, real estate taxes. We've received 81% of revenue for the year. EIT is slightly down. We've only received 44% of our EIT revenue to date. Our other Act 511 taxes, including business privilege per capita, that one is ticking slightly up. We're at 55% of revenue for the year. These revenues are as of the end of May. Our licenses, permits, and fees, we are at 38% of revenue. Overall, year to date, we are at 49% of revenue received as of May 30th. I wanted to point your attention, if I could share my screen. There we go. When you're on the city website, at the top, just off center right, there's a link to city financial data. This is the OpenGov financial transparency platform that the city engaged way before my time. That site has kind of sat a little dormant for a while. We've been working, I would say, on or about since March with OpenGov to update the data that's pulled into this portal. So if you go on there now, you're able to see financial data, revenues, as well as expenditures from 2018 through present. So as of the end of May, our actuals are there. We've received, as I mentioned, on a $92.5 million budget, we've received $45.2 million in revenue year to date. Similarly, you're able to toggle and click expenses. On that same $92.5 million budget, we have gone through 35 million in expenses. So year to date, we are under on expenses to revenue. One thing that is not included here is the increase in revenue tied to the parking authority. Those adjustments have not yet been made to this portal. And we will continue to update the data in this portal on a monthly basis for the public. Internally, it's updated on a bi-weekly basis. And we will use the reports from OpenGov for a council on a monthly basis going forward. We hope that you like this reporting structure a little bit better in terms of formatting, ease of understanding. During the meetings going forward, as the Finance Committee comes back, we can in real time dig into details. For example, property tax in the current year, we've received 19.9 million as of the end of May. Prior year property taxes, we've only received 285,000 on that 1.7 million budgeted for prior year property tax revenues. And we can dig into details for all of the revenues as well as expenditure line items as is your desire and or interest at a particular moment as we go forward in reconstituting the financial reports to council. Yep. Council President, similarly, once we budget for what's going to be Fund 47, the American Rescue Plan funds, moving into next year, any member of the public, any member of council will similarly be able to call up those figures and see them displayed here. If you'd like, we can also allow transaction data to be viewed on an almost granular level, if you want that level of detail. It can be head spinning, but it's all there and it is available to council as well as the public. Those are my main lines. I'm open to any particular questions that you might have.
And again, Jamal, I always think these reports are helpful, especially for newer members of council, but you know, the kind of the executive summary output from this is best for us in our meetings, only because it's hard to, I can look at 3,121,464 trillion over 21 billion, you know what I mean? And I can sit there and go, oh, it looks good, you know, but I mean, I know that there's a 6% revenue shortfall or, you know, a 3% expense savings, et cetera. You know, just the highlights as well. But this is very helpful. I think the public will like this a lot. So I'll open it up to council comments or questions. Anybody? I can't see everyone, so just speak up, please.
Johanny has her hand up.
Thank
Johnny,
you.
I looked at your name. I'm not seeing Johanna's
Okay.
hand. She's messing around with me is what she's doing. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Linda. So we should anticipate receiving these or looking at these every month, right? Because I know that since the increases were approved, that'll be reflected obviously in the month of June, right? So the numbers will look our expenses will look very different, obviously.
Yeah, so there's always going to be a bit of a lag, a 1 month lag on this report.
Okay, then do we have specific dates as to when we should be receiving income from the parking authority?
So we have received the March, April, and May payments. As I mentioned, they're not yet reflected on this spreadsheet, but I received the first check 3 weeks ago in my hand here in my office. The other 2 checks came in last Tuesday, June 15th, as I reported a little bit while back that they would. They did come in that exact day. So we have March, April, and May's payment. June will be approved at the next Parking Authority meeting, and I expect that June check to be here first week of July.
Thank you.
They're all caught up.
All right, additional comments, anyone? Marcia?
Okay, first of all, Jamar, thank you for the presentation. And I can say that the way that finances have been reported have really improved dramatically. And I also appreciate having the Open Gov website. I was just scrolling through it before the meeting today, just because I think that helps for the public that are, able to look through that. It shows them what is available. Is that updated at the same time that our reports are, or what's the time?
Yes, going forward, it will be. We've done a lot of work to clean it up. There was a lot of old historical data that was actually not fully accurate. So we removed some of that. That's why it's only showing 2018 and forward, because we could validate at least all of that data from 2018 and going forward.
Okay.
And it's the public side is updated monthly. The internal side is updated twice monthly.
And we will be getting a Excel spreadsheet for your reports rather than just a printed. I always find it better that I can work over looking at something that I can look at the data sources and such.
We can export this as an Excel document if that's your pleasure,
Yeah.
but my preference was going to be to send it in a summary table form with pie graphs.
As it gets closer for budget time, I like to be able to look at the Excel. It sort of helps me to look at the trends and such, but I will, whatever, I think we all sort of look at documents in different ways and find it more useful. So I understand, both formats, but
I have to caution you, Counselor, and I apologize if I cut you off.
okay.
This will be our last run with Excel. We're
I understand, yeah.
transitioning to Munis, and respectfully, it was a nightmare trying to get that 21 budget approved. I don't know if you're aware of what happened on the background, but it was very difficult to get that Excel document to work by the end of December. So we're going to start the budget process in Excel, but we're going to end the budget process in Munis, the new municipal ERP system that you all approved, I think at the beginning of the year.
Okay, we'll have a talk offline then as far as how we can view that in that particular program, okay?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, additional questions, anyone for Jamar? All right, thank you, Jamar, for that update. We will move on now to the next item on the agenda. Who's going to lead the way on the update on Dana South?
I believe Jamal, would you like to be able to lead us? I see. Is he-
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. The Dana site, as we all know, that it's a very good site, but it also has its challenges. And one of the important factors that we need to consider in real estate is location, location, location. So when we looked at the Dana site, the 50 acres of that, there were several studies made in the past. Most recent one of them was the one in June of 2019, and in which actually it lacks a lot of specificity for the project itself and how we will be able to provide a very good industrial base for our residents here. One of the factors that we need to always be very cognizant about it, and that is for any developer to come into the area and be able to produce manufacturing facilities and be able to generate jobs. One of the very essential things is actually ease of transportation. And ease of transportation does not actually lend itself in here. So back in March of 2020, probably one of the last meetings that we had with the school districts, in which we all agreed on an eminent domain, in which the Public Works Department has started the highway occupancy permit to move on to do what is called the River Road expansion. And the River Road expansion actually ties in to Windsor, as well as it ties into West Spring Street itself, but also it provides an additional link in which Lincoln will be actually become one continuous road, and it will not be severed or terminated in both sides itself. That movement by itself will actually create an ease of heavy traffics to move in and out, because the area there is R3 or heavy residential areas, and as such movement of large traffic becomes very challenging, and that becomes a very big concern for the developers. Since we started with this process itself, we've learned actually that the Greater Berks Development Fund, when they acquired the site in 2002, they also acquired the Norfolk Southern Rail in that area, which makes it a little bit more challenging. That means that Norfolk Southern now has the right to serve the spur rail, or they don't have to, and that is another concern that we have unfolded as we were going with this. But in all regard, what we have been doing is listening to developers and nationally recognized real estate who they came to us and looked at the property. And I have to share with you that the moment we tell them that the River Road extension is not there and the feasibility of movement, basically that discourage any of these industries to come in there. As we unfolded a little bit more, we have discovered also that the utilities, particularly the wastewater discharge, is not exactly to the capacity that they want. I recall through the governor team, action team, we received a project nicknamed as Ghost Rider, which was for dairy products. And part of their discharge was a 1.5 million gallon effluent discharge to the wastewater treatment plant. The wastewater treatment plant can handle this, but the conveyance system cannot handle this. So these are some of the burdens that we are looking for. And as such, what we are trying to emphasize on in this point is that how can we utilize what's called the knowledge industries, as we would like to bring in more manufacturing facilities and offices in that area with high paid employees, but less discharge to the sanitary sewer system and less impact on the utility grids altogether. And by the time we improve the River Road extension, that will actually create an easier mobility for traffic to move around that area and be able to connect to 422, 176, and from there connecting to Philadelphia, New York, and what have you. with regard to the environmental studies, there was an environmental study that was completed back in 2004, and the environmental study actually conducted phase 1 and phase 2, but the phase 3 was not completed, and that would have been actually the responsibility of the buyer of the site itself. However, most of the contaminations, as it was declared in a consent order, were mainly semi-volatile organics as well as volatile organics. So we're not looking at major cleanup work and remediation work such as PCB and or heavy metals of this nature. So these are some of the promising things that we have, but we have not yet marketed the project itself or the site, as we are hoping that we will be able to actually get more control over the expansion of River Road, because that will certainly give us more ability to discuss. And in addition to that, part of the expansions that took place over there was the relocation of the utilities, the water line and the sewer line particularly. So we're hoping that we'll be able to get more details on these things. And at that point in time, we will see how we can start marketing the process, particularly in light of what Stantec and Desmond will be able to provide us with. But as you know, Stantec is actually almost in the half point finalizing the market analysis for the downtown area, and Buttonwood Gate is not exactly that far from there. In fact, it touches on that, as well as we have Desmond Engineering, who are conducting the comprehensive parking study, and that is citywide. And one of the areas that we are looking at that is how the streets are congested and how we will be able to alleviate some of these congested parking there. We all know that Schuylkill Avenue, is heavily congested and heavily trafficked, depending on the time of the day. So that is one of the focus that we have. Hoping that we will be able to get a lot of early indicators from these two studies. We are hoping that we'll be able to start reaching out to develop a request for qualifications, and the request for qualifications is something that Jamar brought up to my attention earlier, but actually it escaped me. And as a result of this, we are going to revisit this probably very soon once we get our hand on the. So that is a summary of where we are now. I'll be more than happy to take any questions or any discussion.
All right, thank you, Jamal. Questions, anyone? Donna?
Yes, thank you for the update. I have some questions that I believe I had posed earlier. And Frank had provided information on trash removal, grass cutting, things like that, because we know prior to those Jersey barriers going up, there had been a lot of entrance into the area, and trash is there, tires dumped off, stolen cars left there and burned. So I'm assuming that it's relatively secure now based on Frank's comments, and that those costs that were fairly significant annually will be a little less. Of course, the grass mowing is very important, because obviously in summer it grows like crazy. Plus, we can also not lose sight of the fact that the Clinton Street Olivet Pool borders that, so we don't want high grass there impacting the kids with ticks and things like that are public safety issues. But you sort of left it vague in terms of when this will actually be marketed. You're saying when the Desmond study and the Stantec study are done. But again, Stantec is downtown, that is off of the Buttonwood Gateway area. To me, this dovetails with the Buttonwood Gateway area. For those of us who have been around for a while, there was a whole riverfront situation plan that was called the String of Pearls, which went all the way from that area, the 15th Ward, all the way down through to the end of the Bingham Street Bridge area. And council in subsequent years revamped the zoning of that. You talked in terms of industrial and higher end knowledge kind of industries, but we've also amended that ordinance and that zoning area to include residential. Has that been included? Will that be included as we look to market it to make people aware that residential is a part of this? It overlooks a river, it overlooks into West Reading. What's the story with that?
Thank you, Councilwoman Reed. Yes, the study that we have actually developed in 2019 does include a part of this as mixed use and residential. So there will be a look at that. But if we would have our druther between who would come into the city, whether it is industrial manufacturing facilities or residential, I would argue that industrial manufacturing probably will benefit the city in that particular area a lot more than it would be residential. Not to say that the residential is not required in there. And in fact, what we have done in the West Gate with the Buttonwood West Gate in there is actually an improvement to that side. And as a result of this, we are going to have 47 beautiful townhouses in that area, and our community, our residents will benefit from this. But if we keep on adding the residential area in there, we are pretty much taking away from the industrial. And what we really would like to do is to see a balance in between. We did receive earlier this year, we did receive international requests from companies who they would like to bring in pharmaceutical companies in there, and they would like to place pharmaceutical companies. So these are the things that we're trying to very carefully look through them. If you look at the 422 corridor near the King of Prussia area, you will find out that in some areas, once the pharmaceutical companies started growing in there, that's when the residential area expanded in leaps and bounds and became very, very prominent area more than that. So we're hoping that we will be able to complete something very similar to that, and in which we will be able to invite developers to do both residential as well as industrial in that regard. The studies that we have here calls for these things, but it lacks a lot of specific information, such as, for instance, the utility usage in there. It does not specifically call for how much an industrial development can have. And if we are going to add a number of houses, 300 houses, as I've seen, that is an additional organic load on the plant. And what nobody have realized that this sewer line ties into the 19th Ward pumping station, and the 19th Ward pumping station, the force main in there would not be able to carry these capacities. So all of these things are now being evaluated in order for us to see what can be the best fit. And with regard to the study, with regard to the request for quotation there, what we are hoping for is to develop more specific information in which we are going to ask the marketing vendors as they come in and market this facility nationwide, and hopefully internationally, we'll be able to see a better use altogether in that regard. And we would like to give them an approach about how we can handle the parking study and what do we expect to see in the downtown area. Because if there is, take for instance, Collegetown now taking place on Penn Street, but they are also looking for apartments for their staff who is going to be there. So there is always that request, and we're hoping that once we can get high-end manufacturing facilities or packaging facilities, we will be able to see that their employees will take residence in areas in downtown or the neighborhood, such as the Hampden Boulevard and that area. So that's basically there, but we are going to pursue the request for quotations or qualifications, hopefully within probably a month or so from Standard giving us the market analysis, because we would like to see the market analysis.
Okay, additional comments or questions for Jamal?
Yes, Jeff.
Go ahead.
It's Maxine. Jamal, I have many questions. And so probably I'd like to just connect with you after the meeting at some point to run through some of these things. First of all, I agree with Donna. I think you mentioned Stantec, and I just want to be really cautious. I think this is, my understanding would be this would be out of the scope of what they're already working on, and not just geographically. So I would just be cautious. I'd like to understand a little bit more about that comment. And let me run through just a couple of questions. Certainly take what you want and answer now, or otherwise we can talk offline. So, the other thought is, if you are starting to run through this process, what about the Callow Hill properties? What about all of, the other properties that belong to the city and or redevelopment authority? Does it make sense if we're going to start looking at the feasibility of marketing these, that we do this as a strategy of all of our properties and not just independently handpick? I don't want to see one sit on the wayside while this other one gets attention now. And I can't for the life of me remember where Dana and Callow Hill fell when we prioritized and did some of our strategic planning. So I'd have to refresh myself there. That being said, I would hope, as we have successfully done in the past, that we would be working with other entities within our community or even beyond to help us. I'm extremely concerned about the capacity of even trying to put something together to market one, if not all of these properties, and it absolutely needs to be done. I agree with you on that. I think you said the third phase of remediation has to be done at the buyer's responsibility. I'd like a little bit of breakdown on that, because technically we were the buyers, right? So does that fall on the city, or does that fall on the next potential buyer? So that would be a good point of clarity for me. And then finally, I think, one of my biggest things is, has the Environmental Advisory Committee been involved? This is a very unique parcel. And when you start talking about potential pharmaceutical companies and them being located close to the river, I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of pollution and poisoning and all things that can occur. We want to make sure that would never, ever, ever happen, here in Reading. That's right off the hand. I was writing notes while you were talking during your presentation. If you want to address any of those, feel free. If not, I'll be looking to connect with you and discuss those points further.
Councilwoman Sahalik, thank you very much. These are very, very good questions. And if I were on camera, you would see me smiling at this point, because they are really well thought ideas. So let me start backward, as my memory does not retain. So please refresh my memory with your earliest questions. But with regard to the environmental study, the consent order that we have entered into back in 2002, 2003 addresses all of these issues, and I believe it has been fully satisfied and completed. But unfortunately, what happened after that is that at a certain point in time, we have accepted materials from different sites that were actually disposed of in piles on that site itself. And there is not any program to it in which it says that the material came in from such and such source, and this is the soil analysis, this is the manifest for the material that we brought in. So that creates a risk in of itself. And that risk will be presented to the potential buyer to let them know that this is what we can give you. This is the bill of health that we can provide you, but these piles, you need to be able to address that. And if it requires any remediations, then in addition to that, any developer that is going to come in And whether they are financing or they're coming in with their own money, most likely they will do their own phase 1 and phase 2 site assessment regardless, because the last time we did this was in 2004. So probably it's a good practice to have another phase 1, phase 2, at least phase 1 conducted. And if it needs to lead to phase 2, then phase 2 will follow to that part of it itself. With regard to the pharmaceutical, we're not going to be basically looking at accepting anything coming in our way in here, and that is not the intent. These industries are going to be fully regulated by the FDA, by EPA, and by the Department of Environmental Protections. So when it comes to that point in there, any discharge will be actually monitored very, very closely in there. And I don't think that we would allow of any nature to go to this to the stream and create a havoc for all of us in that regard. But certainly these are some of the things that we will be discussing. And as we have done in the Planning Commission, these go into very detailed discussions, and we take stormwater management and MS4 very seriously. So all of this will be taken into consideration. With regard to Stantec, the intent here is not to have Stantec address Dana. That is not the intent at all. We have no desire of doing so. And you are absolutely correct in saying that Stantec focuses on the downtown plus area. But Stantec is supposed to come to us with the market analysis for what is the need for residential apartments and residential housing, and mainly apartments within the downtown area. And you probably recall a presentation that was done by David Dixon a few weeks ago, in which he says that there is a high increase and high demand on apartments coming in, and probably the city of Reading will be very fruitful. So what we would like to do is that when we are engaged in a discussion with the developer or a manufacturing facility, to say that this is the capacity for these employees that you are going to bring in from somewhere else. Obviously, Berks has and Reading has an ample capacity of workers, and they are very, very hardworking individuals, but probably the developer will still would bring in some of their own staff and relocate them to this facility. So we would like to offer them to say that this is what will be available. And if I forgot any of these things, please refresh my memory, but I welcome the opportunity to meet with you and speak offline about this. Thank you.
Okay, additional comments or questions? Go ahead, Marcia.
Yeah, and this is a very simple one. It's just a yes or a no. At this point in time then, and listening to what you've said, there has been no legal agreements at this point entered into with any parties regarding the disposition of Dana South?
The very simple answer to that, no.
Okay.
No.
So then there is a process that I think we all know that follows when that occurs, and will be updated as if there is hopefully the opportunity to move forward in that direction.
Absolutely. Councilwoman Goodman-Hirsch, I can assure you that there are no discussions about legal matters whatsoever in that regard. Mm-hmm. And I look at Fred Latchett to comment on this, but I can tell you for a fact that the developers that they came knocking on our door wanted to do this. We have already told them that the property is owned by the city of Reading, and we cannot give you that property. You cannot say, here it is, Mr. Developer. We will issue a request for proposal or request for quotation at qualifications, and that will be the same thing. And by the way, I just remembered another comment Councilwoman Sahalik mentioned, and the same thing will apply for Carroll Hill as well. Yeah, so it will be a request for qualifications. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions at this point on this issue? If not, thank you, Jamal, for the update. We look forward to the ongoing efforts to to bring that property and that neighborhood to life. Just a lot of opportunity there. I guess we gotta find the right fit.
Thank you.
With that in mind, is there any other items for public discussion this evening? We do need to have an executive session, but I want to make sure that if there's a hot item that needs to be talked about tonight, that we have a chance to briefly discuss it. Go ahead, Donna.
Yes, I would respectfully ask Chief Stout to speak about the fire last night that seemed to have its roots in fireworks.
If he's prepared to do that, Chief, go ahead.
Sure I am. As I think I communicated with some of you through an email earlier, last night our units responded. It was around 9:15 to 10:18 Windsor Street for a small fire on the roof of a vacant commercial structure. This building and the fire in it was determined to be due to fireworks in the area. Again, this could have been catastrophic. A large building in this area in close proximity of row homes on the Windsor Street side, along with on the Mulberry Street side, an apartment building across the street on Mulberry Street. There was a citizen who did go ascend the building and all and hit it quick with an extinguisher, which I think prevented the spread, and it was limited to some smoldering in the roofing material when our troops got there, and they did a nice job on it. It was a tough job in the heat and all to open that area up to make sure it didn't extend beyond the area it started in. During this, and as I said, I'm not sure how many of you may have heard, there was numerous fireworks going on throughout the city prior to this and during this time. And I was in the pictures I sent to some of you that were taken from the scene. These were large devices and all. I think this just goes on to show the irresponsibility of some of our state legislators in enacting the legislation that allowed for the purchasing of this. As we go forward, I think this just becomes as the mayor states, it becomes, hey, we are each other's neighbors. I think everybody's got to act responsible and understand that you can't be launching these things in the city here. You need to be responsible and considerate of your neighbors and not burn down their properties or injure their children. So I think that's the message to be sent here. And I think as Christian put together a nice flyer that went out, I'm going to talk with the managing director tomorrow to see if we could spread that message a little further.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you for the update. Are there any other issues that we need to discuss in public before we go into an executive session? All right, if not, thank you everyone for attending this evening's meeting. And Linda, if you can clear out the room to just the executive session participants and advise me when that's completed. Thank you.
So with the executive session participants, did you want to have anyone from the administration?
Whoever's available, certainly. Who's available? We've got Fred. Frank, are you available to speak to this issue?
Well, I'm available to be present for the executive session, so at the minimum, be able to report back. But I'm familiar with the topic.
Okay, that's good. All right. And I don't know, Chief Tonelli is not available this evening. I don't see him. So, yeah, I mean,
No, and Captain Pentheny is handling an incident, but I can ask her to join if you like.
Well, I don't want to interrupt her incident, that's for sure. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, if she's available, she can join. If she's not available, I don't want them to join us. I mean,
Are we still on Facebook Live?
Yes.
so let me know when the room's clear.
Still-
And
Yeah.
let the captain know that if they're available to join us, okay?